the number seems to go down. How many of you who raised your hands would like to share what that resolution is? They must be good ones if you're not sharing them.
I was going to say, my resolution is to eat more fruits and vegetables. How's that?
You, on purpose, made a resolution to eat more fruits and vegetables. It's tough to live life with guys like him around. Eating healthy. Anyone else want to share what their resolution was? That's all right. You don't have to. How many of you that raise your hands think you're going to be able to keep those resolutions? Whoa, this is looking betterer and betterer. That's pretty good. Somebody asked me if I made a New Year's resolution, and I said I make the same New Year's resolution every year. I make a resolution not to make resolutions, and I'm able to keep it. That's a successful way, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I'm not going to have a long sermon today. I just want to tell you a story about a friend of mine. We go back about 15 or 16 years or so. The bishop appointed me to a church in Pinconning, Michigan. And I've heard of Pinconning cheese, but I've never thought there really was a Pinconning, Michigan. But it's just north of Bay City. And so in 1996, I headed on up there and moved into the parsonage. My first week there, I was introduced to Ellen Peckham. Ellen. I was greeting people as they were coming out of the first service, and she walked up to me. She's a tall woman, and she stuck out her hand and she said, "Hi, I'm Ellen." That's E-L-I-N. And I thought, uh-oh. You know, I want to be careful here. You know, she might be pretty perspicative, pretty particular about things. But she turned out to be such a nice, gracious woman who happened to be my secretary there. And she was so incredibly helpful. And I would ask her questions about certain, because I was new there, so you want to know what people are like. And so I would ask questions like, what's happening with these folks? You know, through my first few months there, I would notice things. And I would say, Ellen, what can you tell me about this person? Or what can you tell me about what these folks are going through? And she was so good at it. She would never say anything negative and still be able to tell you what the situations were. Isn't that neat? That takes a real gift. Now, administrative assistants can be very important, you know. The one we have right now tells me that she's management and I'm entertainment. And she's probably right. But Ellen was just one of those soft-spoken people, and I discovered very intelligent. I had to watch what I said because it was like she was always 2 steps ahead of me. Very brilliant woman. I discovered that she had been valedictorian at her high school and that she had gone on to become a nurse. And when she took the state test, she set the state record at that time back in 1970 for the highest score ever attained. And she was sitting there as my administrative assistant because she had been injured on the job as a nurse and couldn't do that work anymore. I found out she was injured when one of their alcoholic patients tried to escape the hospital ward he was in by jumping out a 5th-story window. And she and another nurse caught him actually halfway out the window and pulled him back in by the legs. He fought with them until help came, and that's what damaged her arm so bad she could hardly hold a coffee cup. And that ended that career. She joined all the Bible studies that we did together. She did a lot of the things that you folks do. Visited folks, took meals to people that were sick, you name it. And then one day she came to me and she said, Jerry, I want to consider going into the ministry. And I said, okay, let's talk about it. And eventually she headed off to seminary. Her husband to this day blames me for her going into ministry. But everybody that knew Ellen knew that God's call was on her. She was older than me. She headed off to seminary. She got her license to be a licensed local pastor. And then in the process of things, she decided that she was going to be ordained into the Wesleyan Church rather than the United Methodist Church, which is fine. We go where God calls us. That's why I tell everybody that wants to join the church here, that if anybody asks you what you are when you talk about religion, don't tell them first that you're United Methodist. Tell them that you are a disciple of Jesus Christ who happens to worship in the United Methodist Church. God may lead you somewhere else. God may lead me somewhere else. Well, she became an ordained Wesleyan minister back in, I think it was 2000. And served the church for a couple of years. And then I got a phone call one night about 3 years ago, about 10 o'clock at night. Phone rang, I answered it. And it was Ellen. And she said, "Hi, Jerry, it's Ellen." I said, "Well, hi, Ellen, how are you doing?" She says, "Well, that's what I called to fill you in on. I'm going to die." And the way she said it, I thought she was joking. And I said, "What?" She said, I have a brain tumor. It's just been diagnosed. They're going to operate, but they told me it's the kind of tumor that they can remove most of, but they can't get it all, and it will come back, and I've got anywhere from 1 to 3 years. And I'm just calling to tell people, you know, what's going on, because you'll notice a change in me as the time passes, because it's going to affect the way I think and the things that I say and do. And she said, "And I want everybody to know that I'm okay. That I'm okay with this, because I know where I'm going." Can you imagine that? I'm okay with this. I know where I'm going. She was not saying that to try to impress me with her faith. She wasn't saying that to try to get attention. She was saying that because she was really okay. And as we talked, I felt like there's got to be something I can say, something I can do. But nothing came. And the reason for it was because she was the one with the brain tumor. She was the one who knew that she had a short time to live, but she was the one who was ministering to me with that phone call. That's a pretty powerful faith, isn't it? I did her funeral service last Tuesday up in Bay City. She had asked during that phone call that I do that for her. And I said, "Okay, is there anything in particular that you want during that service?" And she said, "Don't worry, I'll have it all written out." And she did. Isn't that great? How many people sit down and plan their own funeral service? I have. I just locked it away somewhere so it'll never happen. But she had it planned. 16 hymns she wanted. The funeral director was fit to be tied. We can't do 16 hymns. And the family said, "Well, we'll play the hymns at visitation and we'll sing 2 of them." Ellen would have been fine with it. Well, during that service, I did what I often do. I turned the service over to anybody who wants to stand and share a thought or a memory. And person after person got up and came to the microphone and talked not only about how nice she was, not only about the nice things that she did, but about how she shared her faith in ways that made a difference in those people's lives. That she would go to their homes when they were sick or had lost a loved one, and she would pray with them. She would read with them. She just was so spiritually full of life and love for Jesus Christ. And the tributes went on and on and on. She belonged to a chaplains organization up in Saginaw that pretty much ministered at St. Mary's Hospital. 4 other chaplains showed up for the service. One of them stood up to talk and pay tribute. And she said, "I spoke with Ellen about a month ago when she knew she was literally down to days to live. She was still upbeat. She was struggling to get her speech out because of the tumor. And I said, 'Ellen, are you all right?' And she said, 'Yes.' And she said, no, Ellen, tell me honestly, are you okay with all of this? And she told her and her group, you have to understand, she said, I'm in a win-win situation. If I live, I get to be with the people I love. If I die, I get to be with Christ. Wow. Right till the end. Wow. And I kept thinking to myself, I wish I had that. And I hope I have it when my time comes. And many of us might be thinking the same thing. She wasn't Pollyanna. She was convinced all was well. She knew where he was going, where she was going. Life is a journey. I've said it many times. And the goal is to be with God, to be with Christ when our time comes. But on the way, we get in our way, don't we? We make resolutions in life. Some of them we keep. Like, I'm never going to eat broccoli again. Some of them we don't keep. Like, I'm never going to utter a word of negativity about anybody again. But sometimes you just can't help it. Oh, I'm not picking on him. He's a nice guy. My hand just needed to rest there, right? If you know Todd, he's a great guy. But we get in our own way. The goals that we set seem to center in on what we want and get in the way of where we're going. Does that make sense? Now, there's not a problem with wanting good things in life. Don't get me wrong. We want to provide well for our families, and we should, and that needs to be a goal. We want to grow in love for our spouse and our children and our grandchildren, and that's what we're supposed to do. We want to be comfortable and not be a burden to anyone else at any time during our lives. And that's a good thing. But when we tend to get centered in on ourselves, if we're not careful, it can pull us backwards on our journey to where we are all ultimately headed. And I can't tell you how many people that I have sat with in the last 30 years who have gone through 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years of life, and they know the end is near. And they're so scared. They want to know if it's true that there is a God who's going to save me, that Christ really lives. We're all on a journey. It's a spiritual journey. We're all headed somewhere ultimate. So I think we need to resolve to grow in faith. Wouldn't that be great if we could do that this year? What if we all just made up our minds that we're going to take intentional time every day, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever you can, and make that holy time between you and God? What would happen in our lives, in our families, in our church, in our community? What would happen? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could start out this new year by looking back at the last new year and being able to measure our spiritual growth? Wouldn't that be great? To get a firmer handle on where we're going? To stop concentrating on what's wrong in the world and giving thanks just to be alive in the world? To stop judging other people and start befriending them? To complain a little less, to build up a little more? It's all what Christ calls us to do, to become more like him every day. I need to be more like Ellen. She knew where she was going and how to get there. She grew her faith every day and experienced the reality of God. Yeah, the God that a lot of people say doesn't even exist. The God that you can't prove exists except for what comes into your heart and changes who we are in a way that we can't do on our own. A New Year's resolution about you, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to be more like Christ. I'm going to try to take this journey of life, and in the short time that I have, that is getting shorter and shorter, try to make my life mean something. Try to take this time I have on earth and do something more than just play it the way everybody plays it. To see the sacredness behind the eyes of every person I meet, especially those people who have wronged me, who disagree with me on things. I guess I just want to be more like Jesus. Let's pray. Loving God, even in those moments when we're not sure you exist, touch our minds and our hearts. Give us confidence and hope and peace. Help us to see the sacredness of all that you've created and in all people. Give us that measure of faith that gives us confidence to live fully by faith, to know where we're going, to stop being who we've been, to be all that you intend us to be. Thank you for this new beginning, this symbolic time of starting over again. Read the desires of our hearts. Transform and correct. Fill us with your joy. Through Christ our Lord.